That's why I totally defend them, because teams do it without regard.
Ooh.
It's part of the business. Welcome to We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T. I'm Alicia J, and I'm here with Erica Ayala, and we are going to talk about WNBA trades that happened right before this trade deadline. The trade deadline has come and gone, but we have a lot to talk about, Erica.
Ooh, yes.
So let's just kick it off, because we need to break down the three big trades that happened right before the deadline. And the biggest trade that we broke down on Tuesday's episode, so if you haven't taken a look at that, make sure you go back and watch that, was Dejanay Carrington to Minnesota, which was a huge trade in so many different ways. And again, we broke that down on that episode, so go ahead and take a look. And then on Tuesday, the Seattle Storm traded for Brittany Sykes. Okay, everybody's phone was going off with those alerts. I know when I looked at it, I was like, okay. Lisa Leslie said on the last episode of We Need to Talk Now, what the helly? That's what she said. It's hilarious. But in that trade, the Mystics received Alicia Clark and the Storm's 2026 first-round draft pick. They also acquired Zaya Cook, who they subsequently waived after that. And then the last trade, right before the trade deadline hit, there was some rumors for some time that Aaliyah Edwards may be traded, and she was traded to Connecticut Sun in exchange for JC Sheldon, as well as the right to swap first round picks with the Sun in 2026. So with all of this movement, Erica, these three trades that happened, who do you think won?
Ooh, I think that if we include the Carrington trade, for me, that one stands out the most. And the reason it stands out the most for me is because among the teams that we did see make a move, Seattle and, of course, the Minnesota Lynx are in playoff contention, and Minnesota is the top team. I said this on CBS Sports HQ the other day with Tarika Foster Brasby, but I was like, if you believe that the New York Liberty won free agency by getting Emma Miesemann, then I do think that this is a move that will put Minnesota in the best position, probably among all teams that traded, to win and to win now.
I could not agree more. When you look at that Lynx team and the amazing defense that they play, they got deeper in their defense, which is crazy to say, right? And, they have a little bit of injury. Obviously, the biggest injury being Fee. Nafisa Collier was injured. So when you look at going down the line to they're in the playoffs, obviously, but to making a push for the championship.
Right.
You have somehow in the basketball sphere made the Lynx better, who are number one overall as it stands right now. So, or actually, are they? Yes, they are number one overall, right? The Liberty is number two. So
yes,
when you look at this, it's just, to me, they have to be the winners right now, like for what is happening right now. Now, in the future, I would say that the Mystics made amazing moves, because you look at what they have in 2026 in the draft, right? They have 3 first rounders, 2 second rounders, and a third round pick. And on top of that, you do have a veteran player in Alicia Clark, but you're looking at the future, and they already have these rookies on their team that are so amazing. Georgia Amore is coming back. A lot of people aren't talking about that enough.
Hello, talk about it.
These picks. So the future is bright for the Mystics. So I would say now the Lynx won, but the Mystics definitely did their thing for rebuilding this team and building around a young core that is already amazing.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think maybe another team that, if I look for winning down the line, Dallas, I think, made some pretty significant moves. You don't like to lose a player of the caliber of Dejanay Carrington. And I think that Dallas had to take a hard look at where the organization stands in the immediate the intermediate and long term. Now, we had talked, Alicia, you and I, about Arike Ogunbowale. Would that be someone that maybe was on the move? And that did not come to pass. It's Carrington. And what Dallas did, similarly to how you mentioned with Washington, is that they're thinking about the future. They also, I was able actually to talk to Kurt Miller when the Wings were in town to play the New York Liberty. I'm here in New York right now. And I had a really nice conversation with him for a piece we'll run on CBSSports.com, talking about how some of the moves, not just closest to the deadline with the Carrington trade, but really throughout, were a little bit of a balance of circumstance. The injury bug has hit everyone, and especially decimated teams like Dallas. So that might have forced their hand to make these moves this season, but it's also in service to thinking about the upcoming draft classes, thinking about that there will be expansion, thinking about how they want to extend their international profile to have players that are going to be on effectively team-friendly contracts because they are still rookie designations. And so that's why I think Dallas and Washington win on the back end, as you said.
Yeah, in Dallas, we've seen some things that have happened this season. Maybe there is something to look into, a coaching change as well for them. There's a lot of things that they can do to build that team around Paige Beckers and Arike. So definitely going to keep tabs on that. These moves, we're going to be seeing them for years to come in these drafts. So these moves weren't just made now. We're definitely going to be talking about this later. But before we do that, one thing about trades that is so hard are the players are just disrupted, like, completely. They find out they're moving often the next day, maybe even the same day to get there, and they're leaving a team that they love. And there were a couple of quotes that I wanted, particularly from the Mystics, that I wanted to point out. Kiki Iriafen said, "I think this is kind of my welcome to the W moment. Just seeing the reality of it, that's probably the biggest difference from college. Slim and Sika mean so much to our team, and obviously not having them with us anymore is really tough. So I think we're just adjusting to that. It's hard adjusting on a game day, but I think with this team, we have so much grit, and we're going to figure it out. We're excited to welcome our new teammate as well, but it's not lost on us how much of us and how much of an impact, rather, these two have meant, not even just on the court, but in the locker room as people." And then Shakira Austin said, and this got me, "Well, there goes my heel journey. They got my Buki and my Rook. They kept me together, man. Wow. Hurts."
Mm-hmm.
I censored the quote myself. I even have to take that out. But I felt that to my core because I never played professionally. I played a little bit overseas, but I worked in the NBA for a number of years, and there were literally trades in the middle of the game. Whole family's gone. And so when you see that, there's an adjustment to be made.
Yeah, 100%. And we've talked about this with regard to players getting waived. Again, I was able to be at Barclays Center when Dallas came in. And so hearing Diamond Miller's side of the Carrington trade, right? And a young athlete who felt that she kind of was getting a sense, just kind of maybe an instinct, intuition thing, just because as an athlete, right, you're so used to a routine. And when even the littlest things change, you notice them. And so as she's, in retrospect reflecting, she's like, yeah, there were just a few things that were a little off. And then, game day rolls around, see what the lopsided score is, and I'm not getting in. That was another indication. And then the team was on its way out to Seattle, and it was on that flight that she learned that she would have to make her way back to Dallas. Well, first to Minnesota, pack a few things, and then to Dallas. So yeah, it's definitely the human part of the game. And it's the hard part. And I think people can overlook or take for granted that a lot of times what makes successful teams work is that they build relationships on and off the court. And so when those structures are upended, as we saw from those quotes, it can be jarring, especially for if that's all you know. This isn't a veteran coming in necessarily. I mean, Shakira Austin's been in the league a few years, but not that many years. And Iria Fenn, this is her rookie year. So making those adjustments can be hard.
Definitely hard. And that's why when players make moves for themselves in this, that's why I totally defend them, because teams do it without regard. It's part of the
Ooh,
business.
that
And
part.
yeah. And so if a player, makes a move that is good for themselves and puts them in the best position, whether it be monetarily or just like physically or professionally or whatever the case may be, I'm here for it, because teams do it all the time and it's part of the game. So, I definitely feel for everybody with these moves. Definitely some exciting moves in it as well. Excited for Brittany Sykes to go to the Seattle Storm. It's definitely a move that I feel personally is good for her. And when you look at this trade, is Seattle primed for like a dark horse run in the WNBA playoffs, or like even for the title?
Yeah, this is such an interesting question, because when you bring in Brittany Sykes, immediately you see that the obvious plan is that a team that's already defensive minded wants to lock down even more defensively, and that can be dangerous. We've seen, for example, the Connecticut Sun for several seasons be so successful as pretty much a top 3 team most of the time at that 2 spot, because they were effective. They would cause fits for teams defensively. And I think Seattle is trying to move into that lane. They've got players like Gabby Williams. We see what she can do defensively. You, of course, have Nneka Ogwumike. I think Dominique Malunga alongside and learning alongside Ezzy Magbagor, they're going to be a really interesting dynamic duo. I think they have potential to be, I should say. So you add someone who fits that profile. You add someone who has a pedigree, a championship pedigree in the WNBA. You add someone, and I was saying this on another show, that can come in, to your point, when it's crunch time, and without having to say much, can assess, okay, this is what I see. These are the questions that I want to ask. This is how I'm going to put my stamp on this team as I'm still learning the chemistry. There are shortcuts that you can take when you are a veteran of the caliber of Brittany Sykes, and a player that we finally get to see, right, in All-Star Weekend this year, but someone who's been playing at that level for quite some time. That's huge. The question mark, and why there might be hesitancy to answer that question that you offered, Alicia, with an affirmative, is because what Sykes doesn't necessarily give you, what doesn't jump off of her stat sheet, is what we know Seattle needs, and that is a true scorer at the 2 guard position. And now Sykes, it can get downhill. I think they like that she can get to the line. I think you're going to get an average of 5 more trips to the line or something like that when you bring in a player like Brittany Sykes. That's huge, because it slows down the game and it allows you to score without the clock running out. And we've seen the Seattle Storm team fall and falter to contenders like Minnesota, but also teams in the middle like Indiana, and they've had trouble with Washington, with Connecticut, and because they couldn't lock things down late in the game. And so again, I think Sykes, what maybe she doesn't give you immediately like 12, 15, 20 points guaranteed, she can help the team find those points by offloading some of the especially defensive responsibilities, but again, finding extra possessions without time running off the clock. And I think that could potentially put Seattle in a better place, more closer to that top 4 as they were for the majority of the season, early in the season.
Well, listen, you hit us with a little hesitation, and that's okay. I see it. I see it. But I also think that Seattle made a huge move because they know that they're literally like 1 or 2 moves away from this team being the team that we know it can be, right? With all the positions that they have. You mentioned Dominique Malonga. We haven't even tapped into the talent that she really truly has and can bring to this team yet. That is going to be huge. And I think having somebody like Sykes come in is not only great for on-court play, but also it just adds to the veteran leadership that they already have. That having Sykes come in could be huge when it comes to a player like bringing Dominique Malonga along. Not to say that the veterans that are already on the team aren't doing that, but we see what she's done with the Mystics, right? Yep. We've seen what her leadership has done there. And I just think that in addition to all of the things that you said with Sykes and plugging in here and there, some things that they may need, but I think that is also invaluable when it comes to the Storm and what they are truly building. And it remains to be seen if it's going to pay off right now, but it's definitely, the Storm are a team to watch without a doubt as we continue to move forward in this playoff push. There's so many teams that are battling it out. And there's certainly one of them with making a trade like this, for sure.
Yeah.
But, they made a trade, but there are some teams that didn't. And it has a lot of people scratching their heads, especially with the playoff pushes. We just said it's so close in so many different ways that some teams could have stood to make some moves in the trade deadline. Which team are you most surprised did not make any moves?
Yeah, this is a little tough because I think if you even ask a more broad question as to why we don't see more trade deadline moves with regard to the WNBA, compounded by the fact that you and I, Alicia, have already talked about injuries, this being what looks like the season with the most injuries on record. Those two things they factor in to whether, you're able to make moves or not. But with regard to teams that maybe could have made moves that didn't make moves, and especially maybe we're looking post-trade deadline that probably should have made a move if they have another long-term injury, Indiana stands out to me because if a team like Seattle is going to make a surge, then that means that they're competing within that catchment area in the standings as of right now with a team like Indiana and Seattle, competing within that kind of messy middle right now. But we know Clark is out indefinitely as of right now. Sophie Cunningham has missed time, and we saw Sid Colson go down the other night. And I think that's a team that maybe I wasn't firm in that they needed to make a move. I could definitely see them making a move. And I think there are other teams that fall into this category. Maybe if we had this conversation 2 weeks ago, I say the LA Sparks, because similar situation, injuries, young players having to cut their teeth. I mean, Sarah Ashley Barker had to do a lot of work learning on the fly for that team when that was not the original plan for her, but they needed bodies and she was a healthy body there. So, I think maybe you also look at Golden State. Now, when you've got your all-star and your leader on and off the court in Kayla Thornton going down, you have to think, it's obvious Golden State is going to make a move, Alicia, right? Obviously, they were in playoff contention up until right about the All-Star weekend when they dipped a little, but they've made their way back. So they're fighting for like a really probably like 7 or 8, maybe 6, 7, 8 if they push a little bit here. So they could use a healthy body. I think the difference between, in my estimation, Indiana and Golden State are how their contracts are set up and maybe how they can fare in either free agency or even another trade deadline or trade conversations. Golden State has to be a little bit more particular because everything is new. They have a lot of unrestricted free agents, including the aforementioned Thornton, that they have to give consideration for. So are you going to kind of throw away the farm or someone in the farm system that actually doesn't really exist in the WNBA? But my point is, are you going to give away a young, promising player or even a pick to try and win now when maybe if they just hold on, they've already exceeded expectations. So maybe they just hold on. But for Indiana and how they rebuilt that team and how they changed front office personnel, it kind of felt like it was not just playoffs or bust, but that they wanted to be knocking on the door when it came to semifinals and finals. And so maybe that's why it's a little more surprising that Indiana didn't make a move than Golden State or even the LA Sparks.
Yeah, Indiana said, and Caitlin also said, they want a championship. That's what their goal was for the season. And obviously, things have gone differently based on injuries and things of that nature. But what I will say is, when I know Caitlin Clark is out indefinitely, but they, in the back of their mind, they have a timetable on which they expect her to return in their eyes, right? Information we don't have. And so I wasn't necessarily that surprised with Indiana just because they're looking at a Caitlin Clark that is going to come back.
Eventually, right.
Eventually, yeah. And so for me, I understand the impact of her being gone. And they could have somebody come in and help, but they're also just looking at the fact that they have her and she is on her way back. So that one I wasn't like too surprised with.
Right.
Golden State, the way they've been talking this whole season, which I love, I absolutely love. And yes, they have already proven themselves in so many ways we didn't expect. But when Kayla Thornton did go out, unfortunately, hated to see it, but I thought for sure they were going to make a move because they're right there. They're right there. They're still eking out wins without her in some ways. And getting somebody in right away could definitely help them with that push. However, we do have to remember this is their inaugural season.
Right.
We forget that because of what they have put in, and they are looking long-term as well. And so with everything that goes into a trade, whether it be like money, free agency, I mean, there's so many aspects of it, right? They could I'm not saying that they're just going to mail it in because they're definitely not going to do that by any means. Yeah. But when it came to the trades, I think they just erred on the side of let's see what we can do with the team we have now. And I'm okay with that.
Right.
Because I've accomplished so much.
100%.
Yeah. One team I definitely wanted to mention are the Aces. They're obviously not the team of yesteryears. Like they're not that team. And Asia Wilson is having another MVP season in a lot of ways. She's definitely carrying the team. I'm sorry, I just have to say that. She is. I mean, a fact is a fact. And so I would have loved to see them do something. Jewel Lloyd hasn't panned out the way that they thought that it would. That was a huge trade in the offseason that happened. But, you got to get her some help, man. You got to do something. Yeah. And so when it comes to the Aces, that was the top team for me that I was like, hold on, are we going to do something or not? And it was not. So I just think, I understand that Becky Hammon has like full faith in this team still. And as a coach, you have to say that. But she had a quote that I wanted to read that I just thought was a little, it's hard to hear a little bit when you look at what the team is doing in reality. And she said, she said, I've seen them play at a really elite level. That's why you believe in this group. It's because you see moments of brilliance, and moments aren't seasons. Okay. That's a hard quote to hear.
Yeah, it's hard for a few different reasons because I think, sure, if you package it as the positive, right, the affirmative, the other side of that is that it's not a consistent team. It's not a consistent team that's being paid very well. You've got Jackie Young, you've got even Kia Stokes, Chelsea Gray, Asia Wilson, all, within six figures here. And so another thing I think with regard to this Aces squad and maybe why we didn't see them make moves is because they have a lot of UFAs next year. And it's going to be interesting because it's not like last year where you can realistically prepare even before you get to the end of the season, the end of and by that I mean even through the finals and a champion being announced or awarded, because we don't know the status of the collective bargaining agreement. We don't know what the new CBA will look like. And so that is a little bit of a holding pattern, perhaps, when you look at a team like Vegas. And so are they going to, in a season like this, let go of some of these players if they're still trying to compete and make a run. That's interesting. If they really feel like it's not going to happen, do you maybe try to deal some of these players because you might lose them essentially because they're unrestricted free agents anyway? Maybe that's the game that they want to play, but I'm not sure. I guess what I'm really saying is, including some of the moves that they've made uh, up to or prior to the deadline, what is the vision? What is what is the goal here? I mean, everyone's gonna say our goal is to win a championship. Sure, 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 sure. Cool, cool, cool. Tight, tight, tight. What does that look like? What does that mean? What is the day to day? Do the Vegas Aces even have a real handle on what the vision and the goal and the future is for this organization?
Well, and I think the answer is no if you're just looking at the facts and you're looking at what's happening. And also, I don't believe they have a GM yet. I don't believe they have a GM. So how can you have vision without somebody steering the ship, right? And I know it's not just the GM that makes the decisions, but I mean, the GM is the GM. So yeah, so hopefully they have a plan we know nothing about that they execute at some point.
Concepts of a plan. I love
yeah, that brings them back to where they are. But certainly something we're going to be watching along with all of these teams that have made these moves and how it helps them or hinders them from making the playoffs. So, I just keep tapped in because the rest of this season is going to be spicy. It's going to be one that we're going to be dealing some tea about. So tap in with us, and always below, we're going to have a QR code at the end of this episode that will take you right to everything you need to connect with us, because we have so much to talk about in this last part of the WNBA season. And Erica, thank you for being here to talk trades. And we will talk to you right here on We Need to Talk Now, presented by AT&T.